So let's dive straight in.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's just do it. So there are some people who don't know who you are, and just could you just briefly go through a little bit of your journey and how you what inspired you, what motivated you to write the book Metaphysical Anatomy?
Right. So as with every story that we all have, when you've made a success of that, normally you'll find in most cases that there was a pain point that actually transformed into the success. But for me, my pain point was my life. Everything in my life 10, 12 years ago just wasn't working. I was suppressing everything, and the suppression, you can only suppress things for so long. And then either you start having ailments or you start having psychological patterns or coping mechanisms or addictive behavior, which I had. I had a very addictive personality to look for different ways to escape, to deal with the stress that my body couldn't handle anymore. And so I started with personal development work, and I started seeing the changes and the results in me. And I'm like, oh my God, if I can feel like this, then this should be able to work for other people. Yeah. But ultimately what I also did was I took everything that I learned and I designed and changed it and transformed it into a technique which is now rapid growth metaphysical anatomy, custom designed to work for me. And so I thought, wow, I'm going to start practicing this with other people and see how they work, how it works for them. And they started getting the same results as me. So I thought, this is fantastic. There must be a reason for that, because ultimately what I realized along that journey is that our blueprint for 7-8 billion people all is the same. So that means the way that we store trauma, the way that we, translate it, the way that the body responds to it is at least 70% the same. And I say 70% because we also have the other 30% is coming from different DNA lineages, different ancestries, different predispositions, different thresholds for certain emotional stress or different types of forms of depression or ailments. Hence why we all have different ailments. We don't all have the exact same ailment when we have a different emotional stress, because we have different trigger points. But ultimately, the foundation of how we store trauma and how that's being held in the body is the same. So that's where the magic started. And that's where I got excited. I'm like, oh my God, the body is amazing. Like, if we just learn how to listen to it again, because the problem is that we try to avoid the very thing where the answers are, right? So now we keep doing all these modalities and things that's outside of ourselves, where we work with things that's not within, that actually gives you an excuse not to go within, right? So because we avoid going within because that's where the pain is. But going back within doesn't have to be painful. And that's what I learned. And that's what made me get so super excited about this, that you can release something that was painful in a very gentle way. You don't have to relive it. Yeah. Right? So that's where I really, really got into personal development. And so I started teaching seminars, and I started realizing so many people asking me different questions about different emotional stress and ailments. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't answer all these questions, but I really want to help these people. So my drive and passion to support and serve was still there, and just started documenting, different, feedback from people when I would work with them. After having worked with almost 6,000 people one-on-one worldwide, I started noticing patterns and documenting them. And I thought, wow, why did I just take my it's like a spiritual diary of myself and other people that I worked with and turn it into a book? And that's how Metaphysical Anatomy started.
That's so amazing. So just again, to clarify, so Evette's book is amazing. It's literally like, I use it in every single kinesiology session, and clients will come in and they'll say, oh, I've had thyroid issues for this long, or a sore left shoulder, or this and that. And I'll literally look in Evette's book and I'll say something like, oh, okay, well, did this happen with your mom and dad? And this, and that literally breaks down the emotional trauma or emotional stressors, and if you've suppressed them, what physical and she'll explain how it's expressed itself in a specific physical ailment. It's just absolutely amazing. And so when I talk
and then also,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, and also then the key points for how to address them, how to deal with them.
Yes, yes.
That's the important part.
Which is the ultimate key. Like, I'm always trying to explain to people that your bodies are always trying to talk to you, and they talk to you through a sore neck or a bloated stomach or whatever else. That Evette dives in deep when she explains what exactly it is that your body is trying to say. So it is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, I'm a kinesiologist and I studied it for 5 years. I did Evette's course, and it goes beyond anything that I learned in kinesiology. And the best thing about it is that you actually don't need to be any type of practitioner to understand or to implement what Evette teachings are, which is amazing. Now, Evette, can you, this is a question that I actually had for you specifically. Can you go back and explain that people actually don't really need to relive a trauma in order to fully heal it?
Correct. So is that a question from our audience?
Yeah, can you explain that a bit more? Because I think a lot of people suppress their pain and trauma and they don't address it or they don't heal it because they're too afraid to go back there. So can you explain that that's not necessarily the case?
Exactly. So if you look at psychology and healing work quite a few years back, I would say, gosh, probably 10, 15 years ago, there was a very strong belief that in order for emotions and trauma to be released, it needs to be reactivated. And then in that moment of activation, they believe that in the presence of a safe place and space and someone supporting you through that, giving you the safety that you needed or lacked at the time of the trauma, it's almost like rewiring the brain, and then the trauma is activated, and then the safety and the support is given at the time of trauma, and then it releases, so it doesn't lock in. Because trauma ultimately locks in when we don't have either consciously access to the emotional resources to help us support us either physically or psychologically through the trauma, or, a different, or it's like, for example, an action that you wanted to take and you couldn't, like an instinctive response that could have helped you, get out of the traumatic situation or move away from it or change it. So what happens is that the trauma cycle gets stuck. And then in the unconscious mind, it starts to, it's held there as the memory of, if this happens, then we were reminded of this traumatic situation that took place. So we're not going to do that. But now what happens is sometimes we form negative associations or traumatic situations with something that's positive, like receiving love. That's meant to be positive, but not all our, experiences with receiving love is positive, because someone might have abused you at the time when you needed love. So we form that association with needing love with feeling abused. So now we are avoiding something really beautiful and the very thing that we needed. So ultimately, it's about going back within the body, in the biology, and looking at the limbic system, the long-term emotional memory where all these memories are being held, and understanding how the limbic system works along with the amygdala, which is the panic button in the brain, the reptilian mind, the instinctive responses, and then also down through the nervous system and how the structure and the order of how this trauma is stored and held there. And now being able to go back with the body in the biology, understanding where and how this trauma is stored, and then dislodging it, almost like rewiring it gently in the biology, so that it's like a dominoes effect, knowing and understanding with the intention as well, where and how. With that information, you set up for success, and the body gently releases that cycle. The worst case scenario, sometimes someone can cry a little bit gently, which is great. A lot of people have a negative association with crying. It's not. Crying is a trauma cycle completing. It's normal. It's natural. But then people try to suppress that as well. So that's also interrupting a cycle from trying to complete. So ultimately, through this beautiful dominoes effect in the body being releasing the trauma, it can be very gentle and very systematic and very orderly. And it can be gentle.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned in my journey. And that's how I formed that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This is amazing. Right? So I don't know if I had an interview with Janeke where I explained that I had a session, for example, with a trauma release practitioner, and we were talking about my trauma and sexual abuse as a child. And what she did was she actually activated the trauma, and she couldn't get me out of it because it triggered her. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, how does this work? How do I get out of this? And then that's when metaphysical anatomy really started. That's where I got the confirmation. It's almost like I needed a bit of a crisis to realize that what I have was something very powerful. Wow. So I called a friend and I said, go through the structure that I have and please help me get out of this state. And she followed it step by step. And within 5 minutes, it was like it never happened. It was all over. The memory was there, but my body completed the cycle without me even realizing it. And I'm like, okay, I need to share this. This needs to get out. I have to get hold of other people that's been through similar situations, or people that are just stuck and want to improve their quality of life. So that's how it started. And that's where my strong belief and understanding now that you don't have to relive something in order to move forward.
That is insane. So you literally rang your friend and you had her take you through your process.
I did. I was so triggered, and I'm crying. I'm like, you need to do this, and then step two, do that. Like I was completely out of it. I was also just so emotionally, physically exhausted from the stress and everything. And you know, when you get to that point where you just emotionally deplete yourself because you're either trying to fight and resist what you're feeling, or you're so lost within that that you just don't know which way to go.
Yeah.
So, and that's when I called a friend, which is always good to have, you know, that helpline.
Yeah, definitely.
And it took a lot for me to do that, because I'm the kind of person, I used to have this thing about me that I have to do everything myself. I don't need support. I don't need help. And it's the world was just kind of give me a slap behind the head and like, it's time to ask for help. Be humble.
Yeah.
And I did.
Just to clarify, well, this is somebody who hadn't been through your course at this point, because you didn't.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. This person was working. She's actually she works with crystals, and she's actually very good with crystals. So, yeah. The kind of healing stance that I took was completely foreign to her. But I knew she was the kind of person that would be open-minded. Like, because she was a really good friend of mine as well. And I knew she would be game. I knew she would do it for me.
Amazing.
So yes, that's how it started.
That's so amazing.
And that's yeah, you don't have to relive it. I'm very against that, because unfortunately in most cases, if the practitioner doesn't know what they're doing, they can re-traumatize the person, or they don't complete the trauma properly, and you can actually create a new trauma and a new anchoring point and a new cycle that's created, that's trying to complete, that's not completing.
Yes, yes. And you learn this from personally going through it.
Yes, and I've seen it with other practitioners doing their own thing, or, you know, as we all, you know, we all have our own way of doing things, and everything has its place, absolutely 100%. But I have seen how things would just escalate, and the ripple effects of that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I love the fact that somebody who hadn't, obviously at this point you hadn't even created the course, but somebody who'd never even heard any of it was able to implement it, and you got those powerful results.
Yeah, and that's what I realized. If you just and the reason why that person could follow the steps easily like that is because that's how the trauma is stored in the body. It really was that simple.
Yeah.
It really was that simple.
And that's the other point I wanted to make as well, is that healing can be simple. It doesn't have to be this lengthy process, and it can be immediate.
Yes, exactly.
So there's a lot of things that I learned and that I've experienced as well, just in my clinic and implementing some of these techniques that you've given us. But can you talk about it? Because it goes against about a lot of people's beliefs about healing being immediate and being simple. People believe, well, I have to spend years in therapy to get rid of this trauma, but that does not have to be the case. And I think people, you know, have just been hardwired to believe that. And because they believe that, then that's what happens.
Exactly. So here's the beauty of what we all already have. Like this healing ability, we all have that. It's just a matter of understanding the structure and understanding what the body needs us to do instead of what we think we need to do with the body, right? So ultimately, and I'm sure everyone watching here that you can relate to this. I'm sure that at some point in your life that you've seen someone just sitting there and you can feel that this person is, you know, either really angry or very depressed or really sad, even though you have no evidence of any signs, because you may be seeing them from behind, but you can feel it. That's because your body is communicating. The cellular memory between your body and that person's body is communicating. Now, imagine now if you take that person that's sad and upset, if you take that exact same focus and intention and drive, and you switch it around with positivity, healing, and intention, and knowing and understanding how certain things are held in the body, your body's going to respond to that as well, right? So during the courses, what I teach is your intuition is going to explode. It is going to open up in a whole new way. If some people think, no, but I am intuitive, I'm like, yeah, let's talk about this 5 days later. I'm sure, Sarah, when you were at the course, that you realize that, oh my God, I didn't realize my intuition has so many different ways of coming forward. And it's a matter of learning to recognize that and to understand that and to interpret that. And so with this strong intention and knowing and understanding where the trauma is being held in the body, like I said, you know, the limbic system is there. The reptilian mind, instinctive responses, because the limbic system, the emotional memory, and the instinctive responses, these two come hand in hand. Like that's the core of metaphysical anatomy. You can't do a session without these two together, because these two form associations with each other. So one or the other can constantly trigger each other, which triggers old memories that certain emotions and the intensity and frequency match of that emotion is triggered, triggers off the memory, the body relives it like it's happening right now, and then we're sitting with this whole emotional mess. And so it's about understanding that and knowing where and how in the nervous system, the master cell, the cellular memory, where it's also held in the physical body, because emotions is also held in the body, right? That's the body's way of saying, hey, if you fail to, listen to this intuitive message that I sent you, I'm going to send it down to your ankle. I'm going to send it down to your arm. And the messages are all there. So with the book as well, where I break down where certain parts of the body has different messages, including the 679 medical ailments in the book, when you have that information and knowing and understanding where and how, with that strong intention, which I will teach you how to do, and holding focus, learning to focus, where you can that 1 minute sit, and instead of getting distracted by everything around you, just go into what I call expanded awareness in metaphysical anatomy within a second, and it's just you and the client, and it's like this whole world just ceases to exist, and you're so focused with the healing and the power and the drive of the healing that the other person's body doesn't have a choice other than to respond. And then I teach at least 10 extra tools that you can put in your toolbox, that if you get stuck with one tool, here's another tool. If you get stuck with one tool, here's another one. It's almost like giving you a recipe that's fail-proof to support and help someone. So, that builds your confidence, but it's also about learning and understanding that you don't need to jump through hoops in order to get someone else or get a client to heal and shift. It's all a matter of focus, intention, and understanding, because your body is constantly communicating with the other person's body. And even if you just do it with yourself, I teach in metaphysical anatomy as well, how to do the healing work on yourself. It's literally following the exact same structure, but now you are just the client.
Yeah, it's insane. It's so amazing. And you could do it literally anywhere in the world.
Yeah, of course.
That part.
Exactly.
So can you clarify a few things? Because this was something, again, a new concept for me, even being in the wellness industry and exploring all of this. The way you talk about anger and it not actually being an actual emotion, but a symptom of something else.
Yes. Correct. So it's the same as fear, right? So fear of what? Fear is a symptom. Fear is the final reaction of a much deeper emotional stress that took place. Now, with anger, if you take it a few steps back, what did you feel before the anger? You could have felt irritated. So what did you feel before you felt irritated? I felt, either out of control or powerless. Because ultimately, anger is an instinctive response. It's the fighting instinct. And anger is also the last symptom response that tells you a boundary has been overstepped. But I'm sure that you've noticed by the time you get angry, you're already in damage control mode. Your boundary was overstepped a long time ago. Yeah. Okay, so and that's how anger serves us, is to let us know and understand that a boundary is being crossed, or we're not respecting our own limitations, or where our own thresholds are with whatever we're doing, relationships, business, relationshiping with ourselves, activities. And so when you take it further back with anger, the core foundation that I found with anger is the starting point is either feeling out of control or feeling powerless. And anger is the overcompensation for trying to regain a sense of control, either within yourself or within your environment. So when you sit with the session, and that's why I'm very strict with this during the metaphysical anatomy courses, because you don't want to waste someone's time, especially yours or a client's or your own, if you're working on yourself. If you're going to work on anger, good luck. It's like working on fear. Like, fear of what? You can have so many other fears, and you're constantly going to be working on, I have a fear of spider. Okay, how does it make you feel when you see the spider? You kind of need to go a little bit further back than that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to keep looping.
Yeah, that's right. So people who have or feel they have a lot of anger, they need to look at where do they feel powerless, or where have boundaries been continuously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's always something.
Exactly. No, but you're absolutely right, because anger also starts to serve you in a positive way, because people start to make a positive association with anger, because anger equals confidence, anger equals power, anger equals being listened to, anger equals getting tasks done. A lot of people who have a lot of suppressed anger, they've learned how to utilize that in a positive way, which is what I call positive trauma, by needing the anger to drive and power through, different projects, or, needing anger to run that marathon and finish it and trying to get there first. Right? So a lot of times we can have that anger serve us in a positive way. So it's much more challenging to release the anger, because there's a benefit in that. But Good news is I also teach how to deal with hidden benefits, how to get rid of secondary gains within seconds. You don't need a whole session on just finding a hidden benefit or a secondary gain. It can be fast.
And this is why people don't want to heal, by the way. So there's so many
Of
people out
course.
there that are happy to stay where they're at. So can you talk about why, in your opinion and from your experience, why people don't choose to heal?
It really depends. It sometimes, remember, and you'll remember, but in class I always teach that in class I always teach and explain that people start to learn to feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable, because ultimately the body is designed to adapt. So if you're in a stressful and a traumatic situation or long-term stress, and you don't have access to the positive emotional resources that could have helped you to rectify or change the situation or change it to a healthier state of mind, because these resources are blocked by trauma and stress, we adapt to the situation, right? We're adapters. If we weren't, we wouldn't be alive as a species today. So we're constantly adapting, constantly. If you hit a roadblock with a certain emotional stress, coping mechanisms can come in. So I call that emotional crutches. So it can either be alcohol, it can be smoking, it can be, addictive behavioral patterns that, say, for example, excessive exercising, which is good. Guys, listen, exercising is great, but anything done to your detriment, that's when it becomes an addiction. That's when it becomes a problem. In moderation, everything is okay. Ultimately, it's not always easy to just block out all your, secondary isms and benefit isms and everything else that you have, but everything in moderation. But the moment when it becomes destructive, that's when I will start looking at secondary gains and human benefits. That's when I will actually invest time in dealing with something, because sometimes we get so involved with healing that it becomes a way of actually escaping other things in our lives that's going on, right? Healing work can also be used as a secondary gain to escape something in your relationship that's going on that you don't want to deal with. And then so we'll keep working on this issue, and it keeps coming up, the same issue, and you spend hours and days on the issue because you're trying to avoid something else. So ultimately, for me, what I've learned even with myself is that change is something that we all fear, because in most cases we don't have a positive association with change. So that's in all my seminars, all my retreats. The first thing that I address is fear of change, because if you have a fear of change, good luck teaching a group of people how to work and change and how to heal and change their lives, right?
That's right.
Some of the information is going to come in and out because you're going to filter in what you want to hear, and you're going to filter out what you don't want to hear, because there's that fear of change. Because here now you're being given a powerful tool that's going to help you, but if you have a fear of change, half of the information is probably going to come in because the self-sabotage, the selective hearing. We all know what that selective hearing is like, right? Someone tells you what an issue is, or gives you an answer to a big problem that you have, and that person could keep repeating themselves, and you can't hear what they're saying, right? So it's literally all about adapting, but ultimately it's looking at the fear of change.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Beautiful.
I mean, I can talk an hour for why we get stuck on hidden benefits and secondary gains, but to just really knock it out of the ballpark, the cause is the fear of change.
Yeah.
Because we have negative associations with that.
Amazing. Okay, so we don't have Evette for very long because she's like insanely busy. So I'm gonna ask another question that was emailed to me.
Yes.
So this person wants to know about shame and how it might express itself in the body, or where it might be stored.
Here's the thing. It depends what kind of shame. Okay, so you have different types of shame. You can have shame that's related to being emotionally abused, and you were made to feel shameful for who you are because your character was judged. You can feel shameful because of sexual abuse. You can feel shameful because, something that you did that you were very proud of was rejected. So your creativity was rejected. You were practicing a beautiful spiritual, a practice, and then that was perhaps rejected. So there can be spiritual shame. There's different types of shame. So it really depends what kind of shame it is. But ultimately, I haven't actually found a consistent point and place where the body holds shame, because shame ultimately starts with, depending on the kind of shame that it is. So it can be anywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
It can be anywhere. It really depends also if I normally store and feel a lot of my emotional stress in my heart and in my solar plexus. So guaranteed 99.9% of the time, I'm going to feel the shame in my heart and in my solar plexus. That's where it's going to present itself to me. A lot of people can hold a lot of shame in the reproductive area because there's a lot of shame around, sexuality, around intimacy. So it really depends. Yeah, the body doesn't. I have not found a consistent pattern for shame.
Wow.
Depends on the kind of shame. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's a bit more complex than just general.
It was a brilliant question, though. It's a very good question.
Good question.
Yeah.
The person has another question.
Yes.
It is about, so you kind of already have broken it down, but she wants to know about the different parts of the brain and how they're associated to the different aspects of emotions and the metaphysical aspects of the brain.
That is actually, I saw that question earlier and I'm like, this is awesome because it shows me I'm on the right path. I'm actually doing a lot of research on the brain area at the moment. So ultimately it's going to be probably another book. So watch out, it's coming. I love research. I must have been related to Sherlock Holmes in my previous life or somewhere down my DNA lineage. I don't know. But if there's a question, there has to be an answer, because if there's a problem, there has to be a solution, right? So there's an opposite polarity to everything in life, everything. So ultimately, it's about finding it. And so if you look at the frontal cortex, for example, if you look at the left side, what I normally find that is very much related to issues that would make you feel anxious, and the right-hand side, that's more about feeling of like where you'll see depression or wanting to withdraw. So it's extrovert, introvert. Left side on the brain is going to be issues related to communication. Right side, I've noticed, is a lot more connected to, funnily enough, creativity, because normally you think that the left side, because as I teach, it's femininity, left side is spirituality and creativity, but it's creativity connected with masculinity, because people who are very creative, for example, are very feminine. They're very much in their feminine side, but creativity also requires masculinity. So it actually, I find it normally here in the masculine, but you'll find that also these people or a person could be rejecting the masculine, not just within themselves, but also perhaps masculine figures, because there were trauma and negative associations with that. But on the right side as well, you'll find, for example, leadership, decision-making, what's the other one? Also your ability to be in control, but not from, like we were talking about earlier, from a place of anger, or where you associate the anger with the power and the abuse. It's more about that graceful, humble ability to be in control, but also from that balanced masculine perspective. And also at the back of and at the back of the head, it's all about how the world sees you and how you perceive yourself and how you think that the world sees you. So that's just scratching the surface. Yeah, it's scratching the surface there, because what I'm doing at the moment is there's at least 40 parts and sections in the brain that I'm dissecting completely at the moment now. So I'm very excited. Yes, I know, right? So when people ask me, so what are you working on right now? I'm like, I have 7 projects running at the moment. I don't have something specific. I just really enjoy having multiple things happening, because my creativity just goes bananas. That's why I love reading books, but I don't read a book when I'm trying to relax, because I'll read one sentence and I'm thinking, there's a blog article. Here's another book that I can write. Here's 2 videos that I can make about it. Here's something extra that I can teach. And I'm just like, I'm just going to put the book down and just my brain is always looking for something that you can take and share and to help people improve their quality of life, because to serve for me is such a joy. It's such a joy.
It's amazing. It's so funny, because when she asked that, I was like, oh my God, you better be careful, because she might write a book about it.
I know. Your humor was actually intuitively spot on.
Yeah, because, oh God, I love it. So, all right, everyone. So Evette's going to be in Melbourne the September 12th through the 16th, running her level 1 and level 2 MAT course, Metaphysical Anatomy Technique course, which I have done, and oh my gosh, you guys just have to do it. You don't need to have any other qualifications or prerequisites or anything like that. Any person who's interested in this stuff can do it. Literally anyone.
And also, if you think that you're not intuitive, sit tight and come. Really, because we're gonna blow that open. Absolutely.
It just gets you. And for those of you who are healers and feel like you know all of this already, this takes you to a whole different level. It just taps into different aspects of you as well. Can I just say? So, you guys, you can still register. I think the early bird special is still available, but for not much longer. So,
no, just probably 2-3 days. So if you want to come and join us, yeah, exactly. So go to www.metaphysicalanatomy.com, go to event page and click on the Melbourne link for the events and come.
Yay!
Let's just drop it all and just come. If in doubt, just come.
Just come.
But that doubt is just hidden benefits and secondary gains.
Hidden
We're going to teach you how to knock it out.
It keeps you safe, but doesn't teach you very far, does it, Evette?
Exactly.
So it's going to be in Hawthorne at the Kinesiology in College, which is exciting. So if you guys have any questions, you can email me, evets@info@metaphysicalanatomy.com. But you're very busy, so just email me.
Exactly. Sarah's my assistant in Melbourne.
Don't email me.
Exactly.
Right. So, guys, it's just a must do thing. At the end of it, you'll have your own certification, so you can be a metaphysical anatomy practitioner, and you can practice anywhere in the world. You could do it through Skype, online. You could take it with you anywhere, which is amazing. So, and I'll just say personally from experience, Yvette is one of the most generous people in terms of how she gives herself during this course and all of the knowledge that she gives. You could just tell every fiber of her being is presently there and is wanting to serve, and it's the most beautiful thing, and I haven't experienced anything quite like it. So please, please, please come. Whatever sort of limitations you have in your mind, whether it be financial or whatever, it'll sort itself out. So if you feel the urge, this is your sign. You must do it.
If you were looking for a sign, this is it. Yeah.
Yes. Amen. Amen. We don't know when Evette will be back, so you must take advantage of it now, because there's been a couple people like, oh, I'll hit her next time. I'm like, oh, who knows? Who knows when that'll
be?
After Melbourne, where are you headed? Somewhere else somewhere in the world?
I will be going to Canada, and then I'm going to Greece, and then I'm going to London, then I'm going teaching back in Bali, and then I'm going to continue writing, but I'm writing in between. So next year, January, when is it? Next year, it's Sydney, it's London again. I even have Kenya. I have Kenya on the cards. So there's a lot of, I know.
You're going back to Africa.
I'm going to go to Africa. I'm going to sit in the bushes. No, I'm joking. No, I have a wonderful team there that invited me to go teach there. That's very, they've done a lot of different modalities. Actually very impressive. So I'm really, really excited to go. My motherland's been calling me.
Oh, you're not going to South Africa though, I'm assuming.
No, I will definitely be going to South Africa. Yes, absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone for having a watch. And again, just email me. I'll put up, or you can message me on Facebook if you have any questions, but I'll put up the link where you can register for Evette's course and just do it.
Yay, come and have fun. It is going to be fun as well. You're going to be laughing a lot, because I just believe that healing work's meant to be fun. It's meant to be light. It's meant to be joyful.
Yes.
It can be fun.
Throughout the whole course, Evette would always say, just have fun, just play, just have fun.
Exactly.
Awesome, gorgeous. Well,
thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. I don't know if we're going to get cut off or not, but if we do, I'll give you a squeeze soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, be the light that you are. Bye.
Bye.